Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell. You know what time it is. It is time for, well, it's my favorite time of the week. Time when we get to talk about and really relate to the experts to learn everything that you need to know to turn uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage. Now, I want you to hold on tight today because I have an amazing guest. Not only an amazing guest with unbelievable strategies, but wait until you hear her stories. I mean, this is somebody who comes and is talking to you from a place of experience. So hold on. I'm going to start this show and we will get going. All right, welcome back to Thrive. You know, this is our first show of the new year, and wow, what an uncertain year it is! It is shaping up to be. So many unknowns out there. As we're recording this show, we've got a lot of geopolitical tensions. We've got big wildfires happening in LA. The Northeast is in a bit of a freeze, and well, has just been an election year, and we've got a new administration coming in. But as we all know, it's the perspective that you have. It's the mindset that you take into the challenges in front of you that are going to determine your success. And today, we're going to learn from one of the best. I want to welcome to the show, Allsion Massari. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so good to be here, Meredith.
Now, you are truly, an expert, a real authority, just a gifted guide in the world of, really trying to build your resilience to deal with the challenges in front of you. And like most of the guides that have come in front of us, you did not seek this out. You found this through the challenges of your own. So, I know so much of our audience has already heard of you, may have been lucky enough to have sat in one of your audiences. But I'd love for you just to start with your story and what really positioned you to be able to find these answers, to share these answers.
I would love to share that. I'm a lifetime entrepreneur, an interdisciplinary artist. And like you said, this all began in a way that I never ever would have expected. For many years, I had a fine arts business and I was doing commissions for Fortune 500 companies and private collectors. And there was a point where it was very exciting. I was invited to do my first museum exhibition at the Tampa Museum of Art. And I flew from New York, where I was living, down to Florida to get ready for it. And, like I said, I was on the verge of a very big leap forward. It was very exciting. But one night when I was driving home alone from a movie, and suddenly I was stunned by this massive impact and deafening sounds of screeching metal. And I was in a horrific high-speed crash, trapped inside my car, consumed in fire, and nearly burned to death. My vinyl seat was on fire, melting onto my back. My flesh burned down to the bone on my right shoulder. I was conscious the entire time as I was being skinned alive. Earlier that day, I had picked up art supplies, so everything was still in the back seat. Gallons of turpentine were exploding. The entire experience was a complete decimation, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And not just the accident, it was the recovery for years involved that. And I felt so deeply betrayed by life. Mm-hmm. And here's where it's extraordinary is that journey to healing became one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. It's just, which blows my mind. If you had told me years ago as a sensitive artist that I was going to burn alive and go through such extreme darkness and come out the other side better than before, more peaceful than before, I never would have believed it was possible in a million years. And it's like I will remember the day actually when I realized it. It's like this fire was lit inside of me. And I felt compelled to share this incredible message of hope, and that's when I decided to put my art brushes down and come out from behind my easel and share this incredible message with people.
So this is such an amazing story, and what I love about it, and the way you described it, was that it really talks about what the whole premise of the show is that I believe somehow in society we have gotten this belief that life isn't supposed to be hard and it isn't supposed to be challenging, and
Right.
when it is, it's somebody's else's fault that we're put here, and we
Oh,
waste every ounce of energy we have on blame. Like, I love the fact that you said I felt so betrayed by life, because that is the first feeling, like,
yep.
why did this happen to me? But I'm fascinated by because this is where I really believe we help people, is I think everybody has that first emotion, right?
Right.
This is not fair, and it isn't. What happened to you is not fair.
Correct.
But take us through the timeline and how you made the transition. How did you come out of that? Because I can imagine your recovery was not easy.
It was mind bending. There aren't even words in the dictionary to describe the pain and the recovery. I mean, we could have a whole show just about trying to explain that. Um, but, in the early stages, whenever we're struck by tragedy, for any of us, and you don't have to go through what I went through to suffer. I mean, we all, just being human is so difficult, right? And we have to, in the first phase, give ourselves extreme compassion and be tender with ourselves and gentle with ourselves and gentle with each other. There are so many things people are going through that we can't see. So many people appear to be okay, and there are things going on behind the scenes. So compassion is a way to always lead. And in the beginning, I had to learn to do that for myself. It's very natural to feel like a victim, and especially in something like this, of course I was. And,
Yes.
but yeah, but the thing is, there came a time when I realized, like, I didn't want to feel that way anymore.
Mhm.
Now, it was years of a very difficult recovery. I was grumpy. I was irritable naturally. I couldn't understand how to wrap my head around that any of us could live in a world where someone could burn alive. Like, I had to ask
Right.
very existential questions, which was actually that was a gift, to go through that and get to the other side. So in the beginning, it was learning first that tenderness and that compassion, learning to reach out and ask for help, really taking command of my support system, knowing who to go to, who's the good listener, who's
Yeah.
the person that's better to ask to help me solve a problem, who's a talker, a problem solver, who's the person that could run errands and who wants to support me that way. So that's just kind of the very beginning. And then, I just became a student of life. Like, I wore out the doorstep of every wise person I could find. I mean, you name it, every priest, minister, rabbi, every psychologist, psychiatrist I could talk to. And I just became this ravenous student for knowledge, and, went to every self-help section in every bookstore and library. So it was taking command that I realized when I started to shift from contracting from the world, like feeling like a victim, which was natural, to stepping forward and taking charge, taking action. And that was just, I started to see and notice that it was empowering.
Mhm.
You don't always get the answers you want, right? And you have to go through a period of grieving when you've suffered, but then you want to get to this place where you're on the other side of it. And I always tell people, you can't, and it sounds so cliche, but you can't give up. Just
Yeah.
do different things that help you go to the next day. And eventually those days add up. And one day you wake up and realize, oh, wow, okay, I learned something from this. I actually became stronger. But one of the things that I learned, and I didn't start articulating this until several years ago, was the idea of being defiant.
Mm.
That, and not in the way we're used to using that word, like a rebellious child or teenager or something in a negative way, but being defiant on behalf of the light, for your light to keep shining no matter what has happened to you or what's happening in the world around you. That's where the magic happens,
You know
because
what
none
I
of us control that.
You know what I love about that is that I think, because when I think, see if you had this experience, when you start to come out, I think one reason it's hard to come out of victim mode is that society rewards you
That's true.
for victim mode. Like everybody wanted to feel sorry for you and everybody wanted to reinforce that what had happened to you was horrible. And all of that was how people love us. It's how people
Yeah.
support us, you know. My first husband died of alcoholism and I was always the martyr because I stayed with him and people reinforce that. And then when you start to make the change, it kind of disrupts people's pattern, you know, a little bit.
So
And my
true.
thing about being a victim is that I feel like it feels good for a while, right? It's like it's like a little dopamine rush. But if you are a victim, it's the end of your story. It's all you're ever going to be. But if
Yeah.
you can take that victim and transcend it. So I'm so curious that because you had so many reasons to be angry, you had so many reasons to be
Yeah.
mad. You're young, you're successful, you did nothing wrong. H- what clicked? What do you remember what the first thing was that clicked your mind that just said, I don't want to lay here and be a victim anymore?
Though there's several ways to answer that. There were so many different points that layered on to who I am today that helped that. First of all, I think it's really important to give ourselves permission to process that anger. And I
Yes.
did do that. I let myself, you know, my situation was so extreme, I kind of had to,
Yes.
I felt so, I spent my whole life trying to be a good person. It's like, it felt so unfair. And so I let myself blurt out whatever I needed to. And luckily I had loved ones around me in a community that were so kind and patient. And like I said, I was grumpy for a really long time. And of course, but what I started to learn, I started asking people advice, like, how do I process this anger? It felt so unfamiliar, this level of rage. And I was worried if I let myself feel it, it would take control over my life. So at first I
It
was
would have.
very hesitant. Right. Yeah. Very, very scared to do that. But I learned something from a mentor of mine. She said, Allison, there's only 2 rules with dealing with anger. Don't hurt anyone and don't hurt yourself. Everything else is fair game.
That's great.
Right. And so when I took that in, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so simple. And it was such a relief. And knowing that that's all I had to remember was so liberating. And it helped me process it much quicker because I wasn't suppressing anything. I was going through it. And, I was using exercise and getting my heart pounding on purpose to process anger out of my body. I was going to counseling. I was talking to everybody I could. So really taking command of that. And so that was the first phase. But gosh, so many aha moments. One of the things that happened that was interesting in the hospital when, I was on the burn unit for 40 days. And when, as a burn survivor, you have to be debrided. And for me, there was so much, it's 50% of my body had been burned 2nd and 3rd degree. So they have to go in and scrub your wounds twice a day with water and these scrub brushes and rags to take off the dead skin. And it is like being skinned alive. And at the time, they didn't sedate burn patients. They do that now, from what I'm told.
God.
But at the time, we had morphine, but that just that maybe took the edge off.
Right.
And I remembered, like, maybe 3 weeks in, I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, if I didn't have morphine, I don't think I would have survived that mentally. I think it would have killed me. I really do. It was so intense. And there was this day I was laying there and I was like, that's it. I give up. And I give up. And I turned my head to the side. And somehow what's interesting, I had this overdeveloped skill of being able to sort of leave my body. That's something I developed, but I still felt the pain, but somehow I was able to kind of disappear for myself somehow. It doesn't make total sense necessarily, but I detached. And in that very moment when I said, okay, I'm done, like maybe I don't know if I thought I could end my life or what it was, but I saw out of the crack of this eye, my arm twitch. And I was shocked. And I had this aha moment that my body was saying yes to life. My body wanted to live. My body was fighting for me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm either going to be a prisoner of this body for the rest of my life who's saying yes to life, or I can come back and participate. It was so profound. I am convinced that saved me from years of apathy. Naturally, I could have had.
Yeah.
And that was one of the moments that was very powerful. And then, there's so many things, but I didn't want my life to be a sad story. And it was. I wanted there to be meaning.
Yeah.
I believed there had to be meaning. And I was so determined not to become a bitter, hardened person. I mean, one of the things I treasured about the experience of my life before that as an artist was this tenderness I felt and innocence I felt. And so I wasn't just fighting for my life and to survive at that point. I started to fight for my gentleness to come back. I started to fight for my softness, for my tenderness to come back. And it sounds so counterintuitive, but what a gift that was. And I got it back, which really surprised me.
I think there's so much here, and I really love the audience to walk away with steps. I don't believe you, and I'm sure you're on the same page. You would have tapped the other two had you not. You said something so powerful at the beginning, and that is to give yourself the permission to process the anger. Yep. I had a therapist tell me, so we were talking before the show, I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and I tend to think of it as like the woo-woo capital of the world. And so what I did was I said to 1 year, and I was going to go to every kind of anger therapy Asheville, North Carolina had to offer. You can imagine, I barely could get it all done in a year. I mean, I rode ponies, I screamed into pillows, I did everything that you could possibly do. With no judgment on it. Whatever I signed up for, I had to go do. And I had one therapist tell me, she said that emotions are like a teapot. Mm-hmm. And if you plug the front of them, so much steam will build up that something will blow out the back. But if you let your emotions move through you, they'll come out the front in a beautiful whistle. And I've never forgotten that. I think about that all the time, and that if you don't process it. So I really don't want to lose that nugget, because when you said that, that was so powerful, because I don't believe we can tap anything else in our body until anger clouds it.
That's very powerful. And you make a really good point. We can't deny our feelings, whether it's jealousy, all the things that we might feel shame around. We have to forgive ourselves for being a human, right? And forgive ourselves for being a work in progress. I mean, that's really what life is. I really learned to see life as a school, and it wasn't easy to get there, but I still to this day I'll say, when something happens, wow, okay, what is this here to teach me? We've heard that before, but really, and to embrace when we do make the decision to embrace a challenge, something very powerful happens. Instead of resisting it, we end up accessing something within us that has always been there. It's like a reservoir of courage and strength. It's a reservoir of peace. And we're aligning ourselves with a higher belief when we trust that when we go into this, that we will transcend it. Something very powerful happens.
I think that's, I've always loved the saying that pain comes from resistance. And if I listen to your story, what you finally did, talk about you metaphorically and literally, you are experiencing pain, but once you gave up is basically when you started to pass through. So let me ask you this. So I'm sitting there and I'm out there and I'm going through some level of pain, and I'm listening to you, because what I think you do, from watching your videos and what I think you do such a beautiful job of is you've been able to take not only this story and this experience, but your life stories and experiences. You said, that was probably the biggest challenge you've ever faced, but the life keeps showing up and knocking on the door and saying, I got one more for you.
Oh, yeah.
But so you give yourself your, that permission, you tap back in to your grace and your kindness. Kind of walk me through some other ways that you were defiant, to use your term, and not letting this steal you from the wonderful life that you were meant to live.
So beautifully said. I did learn certain ways of looking at situations that helped, and I anchored them in words like curiosity. If we can, when something bad happens, if we can be curious about how to solve it, rather than tightening up and putting a wall up to it, but curious, okay, who is this person that may have hurt me, what's happening for them, how can I learn to communicate better if you're in a conflict, becoming a student of it. And really also looking at everything, having a willingness to looking at everything truthfully. And that takes a lot of courage. If we're willing to seek and see the truth of the situation, the truth of everyone involved, and the truth of ourselves, that's when we have a chance to truly solve the problem. But sometimes it's hard. It's hard to look at our role in something,
Oh,
it feels so vulnerable, right?
yeah. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of times again, I think society is giving you is an obstacle to seeing that. Like I said, like, when you think about your story, there's every reason that you should feel sorry for yourself, every reason that you should that but you have a role in being the victim there. But society's telling you that it's okay to continue to believe that. I just use that example because when I was married to an addict, the truth was I was in that as hard as he was in that. I mean, I definitely had my
Mm.
life was not messed up because of him. My life was messed up because of me. And I'll never forget when he passed away, my very best friend in the world, who's the biggest truth teller in the world, looked at me and she didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't say anything. She said, "It's going to be really interesting now to watch you come to terms with your dark side." And I
Oh,
was like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah." She said, "He's been the bad one. You've been the good one. And now you don't have him to hide up under anymore." And,
oh,
oh my God. I mean, Allison, that's been almost 30 years ago. And I remember it. I remember it like it was yesterday. So I love what you're saying, get to that truth because I think the truth is power. I mean, responsibility is power. Once I
yes.
take responsibility, I have all the power to change it.
Yes, and you just nailed it, by the way, when you're
Right.
talking about taking responsibility, because that's one thing that when I looked at my whole life and how I was interacting with what I'd been through and all the challenges of my life, I started to realize, I talk about taking command and how important it is to take charge, but be the one. If we can choose to be the one that saves our own life, if we can choose to be the one that goes out and seeks the solution, if we can be the one that's willing to make our own family life better, if we can be the one to make our work life better, when we choose to stop waiting for the world to give us what we want and crave, and we make the decision to be the one who gives what we want to receive, everything changes.
Yeah, it's
That's
so
an
true.
instant way to get out of victim. And,
Yeah.
and and it is so exciting and empowering because you realize, wait, I don't have to sit back and think about life is happening to me. And oh gosh, I'm sort of like waiting for things to happen. It's like, no, I'm going to take charge. And of course, we're going to have things happen that are unexpected and we don't like and we want to resist. But at the same time, we can take charge every single day with love in our hearts and with a willingness and a feistiness and a fierceness, right? I always say that you can be tenderhearted and fierce.
Oh,
Uh,
which is to me the definition of confidence.
that's a good way to put it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and how exciting that's something we can all change today. We can all step into that when we decide to be the one. And that's actually my new keynote is
Oh, I love
the
that.
one. So yeah. Um,
So let me ask you that around that. So I'm kind of fascinated by that concept in the sense that I'm so amazed that it took me till the age of 36 to figure that out. And why is it? Why are we like my favorite television commercial out there now is the one that says if you're overweight, it's not your fault. It's cortisol. Like you have a cortisol problem. And I love the fact that it's like it completely disempowers you to do anything about your health. It's the entire message around the commercial. Why 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 do we have to have a revelation to figure out that we're the one? How did we get it so backwards?
I just think it's human nature,
Mhm.
and the thing is, if there is cortisol causing a problem, somebody does have a physiological issue, they can go to a doctor and get
Exactly.
really
You
fantastic
can take
supplements to
charge
shift
of it and do something,
right.
right?
And I just think it's human nature to, negativity is so powerful. It just takes us down so fast.
Yeah.
And part of that is just our survival instinct, the caveman instinct. It's still in us. It's in our DNA of like, if the tiger's coming, we got to run, and you have to be vigilant and be looking out for danger. And that's just so ingrained. So once again, we have to give ourselves permission to learn how to override that and remind ourselves that we can go back to a place of peace and a center within us, and be in the present moment to realize everything is okay, really is okay. But I do think part of it is DNA, the human wiring that we have. And that's why I say it's so important to be patient with ourselves, because it really is a fantastic school to learn that self-mastery.
Right.
I mean, that's really what we're doing. We're learning self-mastery, to have such presence and calm and self-awareness, to be a witness to who we are, a witness to ourselves. And that actually takes us to a very loving place within ourselves, rather than something where we're scrambling and panicked.
And I love the fact that you say to have patience, because there are days when I feel like I'm definitely in the zone and I'm calm and I'm peaceful and I can come from a place of love. And then there are days that I don't. And I don't know if you've ever done the Enneagram, the personality test, the Enneagram.
I
But
did.
there's 9 levels to every personality, and you can see yourself drop through the levels. And I know when I'm in a healthy space and when I'm not in a healthy space. And I think it's irrational to think that we would be in one, all the time. And when you're speaking about the negativity, I read that negativity and blame are a way that we bond. So it's far more fun to go get a glass of wine with you, go in the corner and talk about why our lives are all messed up. And you agree with me that it isn't my fault that my life is all messed up. It's not near as enjoyable for me to go grab a glass of wine, sit down with you, and you have me to tell me to take charge of my life, because that's it's from a psychological standpoint. I mean, it's like you said, within our DNA, it's really how we bond.
What you're describing is so true. And what we have to do, it's like bending iron to
Yeah.
overcome that, right?
Yeah.
But I want to comment too on something you said, this negativity that we can step into. I actually find it to be an incredible gift, because when I see my own anger that may come up, or my own, any of those negative emotions, and I let myself be a witness to it and see what's happening, and maybe sometimes it's very extreme, it gives me so much compassion for other people. When I see other people angry or irritable or impatient, it's like, wait, no, I understand that.
Right.
Get that. And it's the more we're willing to do that, the more our love and compassion grows for each other. And that's really what we all want. Everybody wants to be forgiven when we're not at our best, right? And understood for whatever we might be going through in that moment, and for people to be patient with us, right? And so when we are truly embodying those negative places, it really becomes a teacher, to build our own expansiveness of our compassion and kindness for other people.
And I think that, I think you said that so beautifully too. I think the thing is that the idea is for us to be in relationship is that it's that when I get off kilter, you have compassion for me. And then when you get off kilter, I have compassion for you, understanding that nobody's going to be perfect,
Right.
all the time. But there's a love and acceptance, as long as people are working on it and trying on it. Because I know I still have days now that I can see it. I have enough self-awareness to watch it come up in me. I
Right.
don't have enough to stop it.
Boy, that's the lifetime achievement, right? Like, if we could do that, and I think we're all trying to master that. And you said something a minute ago that brought up a thought. I think you said, oh gosh, I'm not going to remember. That's okay. It'll come to me later. But just this idea, of when we see these parts of ourselves that are where we're struggling, just this having patience with ourselves is so important. But oh, that's what it was. We mostly need to be patient with ourselves
No kidding.
more than other people, even, right? We're so hard on ourselves.
Mhm.
And if we're judging ourselves, we're creating a whole new problem.
Right.
Creating more tension in our body. We're creating more clutter in our thinking. We're more distracted from what we can do in our day. So we don't want to do that. That's another place of focus that's really important. Is
I could not agree with that more, because you only have so much energy in your body.
right.
And energy is it's power. It's what's going to propel you forward. It's what's going to help you not achieve your dreams, but surpass them. And when the more work you can do on a daily basis to control where your energy is going, the more successful, you will be. And if you focus on all the things you do wrong, if you focus on the things that are not right in your life, it's taking precious little energy you need to change the life into the life that you want. So I'm a really big believer in as much as you can. We can't always, but as much as you can, really protect your energy or rebuild it. We're filming this right after the holidays, and sometimes when you go home with the family, not everybody in the family is who you choose, and there can be some energy suckers in the family. But if you balance that with, I'm going to go for a bike ride, or go for a run, or do something that you love that builds energy back into you, then you can
Yes.
balance that energy and have enough energy for what you want to do.
I so agree. And also, those relationships are such a wonderful opportunity to learn personal sovereignty, to learn to have that command within ourselves where we keep our center, and we still want to be open to people that are not being nice to us, unless it's like a sociopath. But, we want to, maintain our openness to relationships, because when people behave the way they do that we don't like, it's generally their own pain.
Right.
It's their own pain. It's hard to
Definitely.
remember that. It doesn't mean they're easy to deal with, and they may never change, right? But when we can learn not to get shaken or taken off our center, boy, that's a gift to learn that. And each time, I always say, like, life will keep giving us lessons, right?
Yes.
And what will happen, like, it'll say, okay, wow, you learned to be, patient or loving here. Well, how about here?
Yeah.
Let me give you another challenge. So I do feel like life is on our side in that way, helping us to evolve and get to a better place. I want to make sure, though, I qualify that, because for people right now who may be going through something really tragic, extraordinarily painful, could be, emotions from childhood. It could be something more recent, something at work, or betrayed by a dear friend or loved one, or these fires. I mean, people could be in the middle of acute pain right now. And what we're talking about isn't really appropriate for them right now. Like, this is for them to watch maybe in 3 months, 6 months, or 2 years, right? And so, like, when I was in deep suffering in the beginning phase after being burned and other things that I've been through, I couldn't listen to anything like this. I just needed deep compassion, and for myself and from others. And that's just the truth. That's just reality, the beginning phase of coming out of something really extreme.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good message, is that you will, you have to give yourself the space and the time to eventually be ready. And
Right.
when you're ready, you can't, like, it's why people will say to me all the time, if they'll see somebody in distress or a situation like I was in, they're like, you need to tell her or him what to do. And I said, I can't.
Yep.
Nobody could have told me. They'll come do it at their time. And
So
but I think when you do come to it, and I think another part of the message, as you've just said, is that you don't go 0 to 60. You go one step at a time, and you truly need to focus on the progress. And that, and any step you take is really, really incredible.
it's so true. I love that you just said that. Every
Yeah.
step it takes courage, and it needs to be celebrated.
Yeah. It is hard to believe, but we are at the end of this
Oh,
podcast. I always like to end with two things, and number one is, and you can answer them in any order you want to. How do people find you? How do they find out about you? How do they learn more about your story, especially your brand new keynote, your artwork? And the second is, for people just starting here in 2025, and it looks to be a very uncertain year, pace of change is rapidly increasing. What one or two pieces of advice would you have for them to turn all of this uncertainty into their greatest competitive advantage?
Well, people can find me. We'll start with that with at my website, AllsionMassari.com. And there are so many videos on there, so many videos on different pages. They can do a deep dive, a lot of content to help people with just wanting to feel supported by life. I will say, like I said earlier, if someone is going through an extreme situation right now, it wouldn't be appropriate to watch my videos. You need a lot of tenderness and care right now, especially people who have gone through a fire, like what's happening in Southern California. But, and then to answer your other question about this year, just give yourself grace, align yourself with your values and the truth of knowing that you can create an absolutely beautiful life. Be patient with yourself, be patient with others, and be defiant to fight for your gentleness, for your softness, and for your goodness, and know that you can create, whether it's success in your family, in your personal life, in your business, at your workplace, you can create that, and just choose to be the one that steps forward and does that.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Such great advice, such a fantastic conversation. And for all the listeners, I really want you to take this advice. I don't care what level the challenge is in front of you, but when things show up, remember to give yourself that compassion, to give yourself the grace. And as Allison says, make sure that you are defiant, to hold on to those things that are authentically you. All right. We'll see you right back here next week with another episode of Thrive, another set of strategies that are going to help you turn all of this uncertainty into your greatest competitive advantage.